Hello, Hoops fans. Welcome back to Tips and Streams, your go-to spot for all things NBA betting. As always, it's your host, Kokan here, and I'm super excited to bring you today's jam-packed episode. We've got a thrilling lineup of today's NBA games, and I'm ready to dive deep with our predictions and insider tips. Whether you're a seasoned bettor or just getting into the game, today's episode is tailored just for you. Stay tuned, and let's get into today's NBA betting predictions on Tips and Streams. The first today's prediction is for matchup between Toronto Raptors and Charlotte Hornets. In the last 5 games on their home field, the Hornets had a minus 11.9 net rating, while in the same period, the Raptors had a minus 13.6 net rating in their away games. Tonight's clash on the court features the Toronto Raptors squaring off against the Charlotte Hornets, setting the stage for an electrifying showdown that's bound to highlight the team's current streaks, statistical milestones, and their historical face-offs in the league. A deep dive into the numbers shows the Raptors, despite a challenging season with 17 wins and 33 losses, boast a sharper shooting game with a field goal percentage of 47.91% against the Hornets' 45.73%. This shooting prowess, along with their offensive output, averaging 114.57 points per game over the Hornets' 108.33, tips the scales in Toronto's favor offensively. Defensively, it's been a rough ride for both squads, with the Raptors conceding an average of 117.35 points and the Hornets not far behind at 120.27 points per game. Yet, Toronto's marginally better defense might not turn the tide against a Charlotte team that's been lagging on the scoring front. The Raptors also lead in rebounds and assists, indicating their superior control over the game's flow and ball distribution. Examining the trends leading into this game, the Raptors and Hornets show some troubling stats. Toronto's recent performance is shaky, going 1-8 in their last 9 games, though they've historically had the upper hand against Charlotte, with a 5-1 record in their last 6 meetings. Conversely, the Hornets are on a bleak streak, losing their last 8 games, including 7 straight losses at home. Despite these stats, the Raptors' current form, especially with Jontay Porter's status uncertain due to injury, doesn't guarantee a clear win. Looking at their past clashes in Charlotte, the teams have each snagged 3 wins out of the last 6, indicating that the Hornets somehow step up their game against the Raptors on their home court. With Charlotte missing key players like Mark Williams and Gordon Hayward, the prediction tilts towards a tight battle driven by Toronto's offensive edge and Charlotte's grit. Despite the Raptors' statistical advantage, the dynamics of NBA games, recent performances, injuries, and the history of these matchups in Charlotte point to a closely fought battle. It wouldn't shock anyone if the Raptors pulled off a win, but the smart money might be on the Charlotte Hornets to beat the 7-point spread, considering their past performance and the unpredictable nature of the NBA. Expect this duel to potentially go down to the wire, with a bet on the Hornets to come through against the odds. Today's prediction is for the game between Cleveland Cavaliers and Washington Wizards. Tonight's showdown sees the Cleveland Cavaliers squaring off against the Washington Wizards in what's shaping up to be a riveting battle on the hardwood. The Cavaliers, sporting a solid 32-16 record, have been tearing up the court with their dynamic team synergy and rock-solid performances, notably boasting an average scoring of 114.32 points per game while keeping their opponents to just 109.66 points. Their shooting precision is impressive, with a field goal accuracy of 47.87% and hitting 35.71% from beyond the arc, showcasing their lethal offensive prowess. Facing them, the Washington Wizards are in a bit of a bind with a 9-40 record, signaling a challenging season. Despite outscoring the Cavaliers slightly with an average of 114.69 points per game, their defensive struggles are glaring, conceding an average of 124.04 points. Their shooting metrics are a tad behind the Cavaliers, with a field goal success rate of 47.59% and a 3-point hit rate of 34.63%. The battle for rebounds also leans in favor of the Cavaliers, who average 45.04 rebounds per game compared to the Wizards' 40.37, indicating a clear edge in board control. Injuries could significantly influence tonight's game outcome, with the Wizards possibly missing crucial players like Kyle Kuzma, Marvin Bagley, and Isaiah Livers, affecting their scoring depth and spacing. The Cavaliers, missing Tristan Thompson and Ty Jerome, seem better equipped to handle these losses due to their deeper roster. Recent trends highlight the Cavaliers' winning momentum and their knack for beating the spread, particularly against the Wizards, underlining their capacity to secure wins decisively. The Wizards have been faltering both in outright wins and against the spread, hinting at potential difficulties facing a powerhouse like the Cavaliers. Historically, the Cavaliers have had the upper hand in their matchups in Washington, consistently winning and beating the spread in recent encounters. This history, combined with the Cavaliers' stellar performance metrics and the Wizards' defensive issues, strongly points towards a Cleveland victory. The Cavaliers' prowess on the road and against Eastern Conference rivals, together with the Wizards' lackluster home spread record and performance in midweek games, further cements the Cavaliers as the clear favorites. Taking into account the stats comparison, injury updates, and current form, the forecast strongly favors a Cleveland Cavaliers victory, and they're expected to beat the spread comfortably. The Cavaliers are currently among the hottest teams in the league, consistently covering the spread in recent games, and have a strong track record against the Wizards. Their offensive efficiency, coupled with the Wizards' defensive frailties, leads to an expectation of a high-scoring game, likely exceeding 234.5 total points. In summary, the Cleveland Cavaliers are anticipated to extend their winning run, leveraging their offensive and defensive strengths against the Wizards' vulnerabilities. The Cavaliers are set to easily beat the spread, with the game's total points expected to surpass the 234.5 threshold. Despite the hefty 11-point spread for a visiting team, backing the Cavaliers to win and cover, with a bet on the total going over, seems like a solid choice. The next today's prediction is for the game between Golden State Warriors and Philadelphia 76ers. Tonight's showdown between the Golden State Warriors and the Philadelphia 76ers is gearing up to be a blockbuster event on the court. With the Warriors holding a 22-25 record and an impressive offensive average of 118.96 points per game, they're a force to be reckoned with. Meanwhile, the 76ers, with a 30-24 record, are hot on their heels, boasting an average of 119.10 points per game. However, the Warriors' defensive gameplay has been less than stellar away from home, which could tip the scales in tonight's face-off. The game's intrigue is heightened by the injury roster, sidelining Warriors' Chris Paul, Gary Payton, and Moses Moody, potentially affecting their defensive synergy and bench resilience. The 76ers are not without their woes, missing Joel Embiid and DeAnthony Melton, with Nicholas Batum's participation up in the air, possibly disrupting their paint and perimeter defense strategies. Statistically speaking, it's a tight race between the two teams in terms of field goal percentage, with the 76ers slightly outpacing the Warriors. Nonetheless, the Warriors shine with their three-point prowess, a critical factor in challenging the 76ers' defense. Their ability to dominate rebounds and assists could neutralize the 76ers' marginal scoring and field goal efficiency lead. Past matchups paint a compelling narrative, with the Warriors traditionally outperforming the 76ers, especially in terms of covering the spread. Yet, in Philadelphia, the 76ers have shown resilience, supported by their strong against-the-spread record at home against the Warriors. Recent trends also play a role, with the Warriors showing promising against-the-spread performance, despite their road game challenges. In contrast, the 76ers seem to be hitting a rough patch, with a less convincing performance against the spread in recent games. However, their record against Western Conference teams at home on Wednesdays offers a glimmer of hope. The beginning of the month has been rough for the 76ers, with the Warriors not only healthier, but also coming off a recent victory against them. Considering the Warriors' positive net rating on the road and the 76ers' struggling home game performance, the Warriors seem like the safe bet. However, their road issues cannot be overlooked. Thus, I'm leaning towards a prediction of a total points play, crossing the over-under threshold. Taking into account the offensive firepower of both teams, recent form, and the impact of key injuries, it's shaping up to be a scoring bonanza, likely exceeding the 236.5 points mark. With both teams capable of lighting up the scoreboard and defensive gaps expected due to missing key players, anticipate an offensive exhibition. To sum up, tonight's game promises edge-of-your-seat action with a scoreboard that's set to skyrocket. The lack of defensive powerhouses on either side is poised to result in a high-scoring spectacle, pushing the total points beyond the predetermined line. Despite the Warriors' historical advantage, the 76ers' home-court tenacity and both teams' scoring capabilities hint at an electrifying game that overshoots the 236.5 points total. My wager is on the game's total points, soaring past this mark. The next today's prediction is for the game between Atlanta Hawks and Boston Celtics. Tonight's showdown in Boston between the Atlanta Hawks and the Boston Celtics promises an electrifying mix of strategy, ambition, and skill. The Celtics, towering in the Eastern Conference with a stellar 38-12 record, are pitted against the underdog Hawks, who at 22-28 are hungry for a comeback to secure a playoff spot. Diving into the stats, the Celtics hold a slender advantage in both offensive prowess and defensive solidity. Their scoring averages are closely matched, with Boston putting up 120-30 points per game to Atlanta's 121.18. Yet, it's on the defensive end where Boston shines, conceding a mere 110.96 points per game, a stark contrast to Atlanta's 123.43, showcasing the Celtics' well-rounded game plan. The battle extends to shooting accuracy, where Boston's precision from the field and beyond the three-point line surpasses Atlanta's, marked by percentages of 47.68% and 37.91% respectively. This sharpshooting, combined with Boston's edge in rebounding, suggests they might dominate the game's flow and capitalize on second-chance opportunities. Historically, Boston has had the upper hand in this matchup, especially in recent games, with Atlanta struggling to find wins and beat the spread against the Celtics. Their challenges are magnified in Boston, where their past performances hint at a psychological advantage for the home team, exacerbated by Atlanta's difficulties in away games. Injuries could play a crucial role tonight, with Atlanta feeling the absence of Clint Capella and Boston potentially missing Jaylen Brown. Yet, Boston's depth and resilience in covering for key players could tilt the scales in their favor. Despite Atlanta's recent upswing, including notable victories in a close game against the Clippers, Boston's home court dominance and statistical superiority in critical aspects appear decisive. However, the Hawks' offensive momentum and the significant point spread present an intriguing dynamic. Atlanta's capacity for high-scoring games and their recent form suggest they could narrow the gap more than anticipated. While the Celtics are the favorites, Atlanta's drive for playoff contention and their knack for high-scoring matchups could see them beating the spread. Expect a fast-paced encounter, with each team looking to exploit defensive gaps. Nonetheless, Boston's strategic play and defensive efficiency are likely to secure them a win, but Atlanta's urgency and scoring ability hint at a closer contest than the odds imply. In sum, despite traditionally betting against the Hawks due to their poor season performance in covering spreads, their recent form, including impressive wins, warrants attention in the underdog role. The Celtics, although superior, face high expectations reflected in the spread. Given the Hawks' recent performances, taking them to cover the sizable spread seems a worthy bet. The next today's prediction is for the game between San Antonio Spurs and Miami Heat. In the vibrant heart of Miami, an electrifying showdown is on the horizon as the San Antonio Spurs gear up to face the Miami Heat. This matchup promises a fascinating blend of strategies and performances given the stark contrast in both teams' current standings. The Spurs, with a record reflecting more losses than wins, 10-40, appear to be in a phase of regrouping and rebuilding. Meanwhile, the Heat, boasting a more favorable tally, 27-24, are eyeing a spot in the playoffs with determination. Despite the Spurs' challenges in racking up victories, they slightly outperformed the Heat in scoring, averaging 112.34 points per game against the Heat's 110.45. Yet, when it comes to defense, Miami shines, conceding fewer points on average, 111.39, compared to San Antonio's 120.86, underscoring their defensive prowess. The teams are closely matched in shooting efficiency, but Miami takes the lead in three-point precision, a critical factor that could swing today's game in their favor. A deeper dive into the stats reveals differences in play style. The Spurs showcase exceptional teamwork, leading in assists with an average of 29.34 per game, surpassing the Heat's 25.73. The rebounding stats are closely contested, but this is unlikely to decisively influence the game's outcome. San Antonio faces an uphill battle given their recent form and a daunting history against the Heat, especially in away games. Yet, their recent performance against the spread indicates a tenacity that shouldn't be underestimated. The Heat, while struggling in their last few games, have a solid record against the Spurs at home, suggesting an advantage in familiar territory. However, their performance in consecutive games raises questions about their stamina and resilience. The historical matchups in Miami hint at the Spurs' competitive spirit, even in hostile territory. With both teams at full strength, the stage is set for a clash free from injury distractions. Despite the Heat's challenges in back-to-back games, the Spurs' resilience in covering the spread, especially when the odds are against them, points to a potential edge in this encounter. My analysis leans toward the Spurs managing to cover the 8-point spread, fueled by their knack for tight games and the Heat's potential fatigue in this back-to-back scenario. Expect a tightly contested battle, but with the Spurs' playmaking and trend in beating the spread, they're the pick to cover the 8-point spread in Miami. The next today's prediction is for the game between New Orleans Pelicans and Los Angeles Clippers. In the high-voltage ambiance of the NBA, the forthcoming showdown between the New Orleans Pelicans and the Los Angeles Clippers is shaping up to be a dazzling display of hoops mastery. Set in the City of Angels, this face-off brings together two of the league's powerhouse teams, each boasting distinct advantages and current forms that set the stage for a riveting contest on the hardwood. The New Orleans Pelicans have carved out an impressive path this season, boasting a record of 29 wins and 21 losses. They're dropping buckets at an average of 116.45 points per game, backed by a sharpshooting field goal accuracy of 48.66% and a three-point conversion rate of 37.7%. Defensively, they're holding teams to 111.67 points per game, demonstrating a well-rounded game plan that balances attacking flair with defensive grit. The Pelicans are also a force on the boards, snagging an average of 44.47 rebounds per game, a key element in dictating the tempo and controlling possession. On the flip side, the Los Angeles Clippers, with a stellar record of 34 wins and 15 losses, have a slight edge in offensive might, averaging 118.15 points per game. Their precision from the field and beyond the arc is noteworthy, with field goal percentages at 49.48% and three-point percentages at 39.46%, respectively. However, they're slightly more generous on the defensive side, allowing 112.86 points per game, and their rebounding tally stands a notch lower at 43.44 per game. When it comes to the direct matchups in Los Angeles, the Pelicans have historically had the upper hand, clinching victories and beating the spread in 5 of their last 6 encounters. This historical dominance, coupled with the Pelicans' clean bill of health and the question mark over the Clippers' Ivica Zubac's participation, adds an extra layer of intrigue to the match's dynamics. Recent trends indicate the Pelicans' prowess in overcoming the spread, especially in their clashes with the Clippers and on the road, showcasing their toughness and adaptability in hostile territories. Meanwhile, the Clippers have shown their strength on their home court and against Western Conference foes, highlighting their ability to perform under familiar conditions. Although the Pelicans are slightly behind in scoring and shooting efficiencies, their superior rebounding stats and recent victories over the Clippers, particularly in Los Angeles, suggest a competitive edge. The Clippers' outstanding record and scoring prowess point to their high execution level, but the Pelicans' history of covering the spread in past meetings is a factor that cannot be ignored. Taking into account the stats, recent form, and historical matchups, this encounter is expected to be tighter than the 7.5-point spread indicates. The Pelicans' strong track record against the Clippers, especially in Los Angeles, along with their knack for keeping games competitive, suggests they'll beat the spread. However, the Clippers' formidable home performance and scoring efficiency position them as the likely victors. Anticipate an explosive scoring game, with both teams pushing the total towards the over on the projected 231 points. In summary, while the Los Angeles Clippers might secure a victory in this intense battle, the New Orleans Pelicans are predicted to beat the spread, making the game more competitive than many might foresee. The combination of both teams' forms, recent performances, and their history points to a matchup that promises both excitement and competitiveness. Note, this prediction carries a subjective tint due to a personal bias against the Clippers. The game's outcome might vary, but my support leans towards the New Orleans Pelicans to beat the 8-point spread. The last prediction for today is for the game between Detroit Pistons and Sacramento Kings. Tonight's showdown is set to ignite the hardwood as the Detroit Pistons roll into the Sacramento Kings court for a basketball brawl that's sure to captivate. The Pistons, with their backs against the wall this season at a 643 record, are gearing up to face the high-flying Kings, who boast a 29-20 tally. Despite the wide gap in their win-loss columns, the past encounters and trends suggest we might witness a tighter contest than the numbers imply. Detroit, though lagging in victories, has a knack for beating the odds, boasting a 9-2 record against the spread in their recent 11 matchups. Their journey on the road, particularly against the West, shows a grim 119 straight-up record, yet they consistently outdo expectations in Sacramento, covering the spread in their last 6 visits. This trend of outshining the spread in Kings territory hints at the Pistons' surprising resilience. On the flip side, the Kings are on a scoring spree, averaging 118.52 points per game against the Pistons' 112.59, with their shooting efficiency slightly edging out Detroit's. However, Sacramento's recent home record against the spread, standing at 2-5 in their last 7, reveals some chinks in their armor that Detroit might just exploit. Injury updates could tilt the scales in tonight's clash, with Detroit missing Isaiah Stewart's inside muscle and the Kings potentially without Sasha Vezenkov's scoring flair. Stewart's absence might weaken Detroit's rebounding and interior defense, while Vezenkov's uncertain play could dent the Kings' scoring depth. Looking back, Detroit has snagged 3 wins and covered the spread in half of their last 10 encounters with the Kings. Notably, their Sacramento saga includes 2 wins and a perfect spread cover in their recent 4 visits, signaling the Pistons' penchant for upsets in the Kings' realm. Considering the stats, trends, and history, the Kings might be the favorites on paper, but Detroit's spread-covering habit in Sacramento and their recent success against the odds paint a picture of a potential upset. The hefty 12.5-point spread for the Kings looks daunting, but the Pistons' history of resilience in such scenarios cannot be ignored. Tonight's face-off is shaping up to be a nail-biter. While the Kings are poised for a home victory, the gritty Pistons, with their history of defying the spread in Sacramento, are likely to keep things tighter than the 12.5-point spread suggests. Factoring in the trends and Detroit's disruptive potential, it's plausible to expect total points to fall under the 243.5 mark, a testament to Sacramento's offensive might clashing with Detroit's dogged determination. So, brace for a Kings win, but not by the spread, with total points dipping below 243.5. This prediction leans on Detroit's history and trends in Sacramento, showcasing their ability to upend expectations against the odds.